All right, let's dive into something that's always been fascinating. How one continent, North America, produced two nations with such incredibly different stories. I mean, how did the United States and Canada, who share so much, end up on such different paths? Let's get into it.
I mean, really, think about it. How does this happen? You've got two neighbors sharing the longest, peaceful border in the world, and yet they developed such distinct identities, economies, and even climates. It's a question that really gets to the very core of who they are.
Well, the thing is, the answer isn't just buried in some dusty history book. Nope, it's literally written all over the map, in the geography of the continent itself. And to really get it, we need a special kind of lens, a framework for seeing the deep, deep connections between people and the places they call home. And to decode all this, we're going to use what the pros use. It's kind of like a geographer's secret toolkit, the 5 themes: location, place, interaction, movement, and region. Using this exact framework, we can start to unpack the very different stories of the US and Canada. Okay, so first things first. Let's start with the absolute basics: location and place. We need to know where these countries are, and, just as crucial, what they're actually like on the ground. Now, this is where it gets really interesting. Canada is actually the second biggest country in the world, even bigger than the US in terms of land area. But look at the population. It's not even close. The US has over 10 times more people. That single fact, that size versus people ratio, is a huge piece of this whole puzzle. And this number right here says it all. Just 8 people per square mile. That's it. It tells you everything you need to know about how vast and, in many places, empty Canada is. And that has massive implications for, well, for just about everything. Now, when you look at the US, it's a land of incredible physical diversity. You've got flat coastal plains that were perfect for early settlement. You've got the massive, fertile breadbasket in the middle that could feed a growing nation. And then you have the resource-rich mountains out west. This variety fueled all sorts of different economies and ways of life right from the get-go. Canada's geography, though, tells a totally different story. For one, the climate is much, much colder. It's dominated by these vast northern forests, and then just tundra, Arctic tundra, where the ground is literally frozen all year round. They call it permafrost. And that dramatically limits where people can live and farm, which is why most of Canada's population is packed into this thin little strip along its southern border. So that's the physical place. But what about the human side of things? Well, the US is famously known as a nation of immigrants, right? The melting pot. It's been shaped by waves of people from all over the world, creating this incredibly complex and diverse cultural landscape. Canada's story is also one of immigration, but it has this unique foundation. It was built on a bilingual legacy from its British and French colonial roots, so that dual identity is a core part of its character. That's why you often hear it described not as a melting pot, but as a cultural mosaic. All right, so we have these very distinct places. The next question is, how have people and the environment shaped each other? This brings us to human-environment interaction. Geographers have a really simple way of breaking this down. We do 3 basic things. We use the environment, we farm it, we mine it, we fish it, we modify it, we build cities, construct dams, clear forests, and of course we have to adapt to it. We wear the right clothes, build the right kind of houses, that sort of thing. And boy, did these two nations have a lot of resources to use. Both are incredibly rich in natural resources, which totally fueled their economies. But you can spot some key differences here. The US developed these massive industrial sectors like steel and automobiles, while Canada's economy is still deeply tied to its vast natural landscapes, with huge industries in forestry, fishing, and mining. Of course, none of this just happened in a bubble. The entire story of North America is a story of movement, of people, ideas, goods, and even diseases traveling across the continent and the oceans. The story starts thousands and thousands of years ago with the first migrations from Asia. But the waves of movement that came later, from Viking explorers to European colonists, and the horrific forced migration of the Atlantic slave trade, would forever and completely change the continent. The arrival of Columbus wasn't just about people, it triggered what we now call the Columbian Exchange. This was a massive transfer of, well, pretty much everything in both directions. While Europe gained incredible new crops like potatoes and corn, the Americas were absolutely devastated by old world diseases like smallpox, which native populations had no immunity to.
Okay, that brings us to our final theme, region. This is how we organize areas by their shared characteristics. And one of the most powerful ways to define a region is by its system of government. And here we see a fundamental split. The US was born from a violent revolution against Britain, creating a federal republic with a president. Canada, on the other hand, evolved much more gradually into a parliamentary democracy that, while independent, still technically has the British monarch as its symbolic head of state. That different path, that revolutionary origin, led the US to create a very specific answer to a very important question. How do you stop a government from becoming a tyranny?
And the answer they came up with was this ingenious system, checks and balances. Born from a deep suspicion of concentrated power, the whole thing was designed so the three branches of government would constantly be policing each other. It became a central part of the American identity.
Now, Canada's huge, sparsely populated northern geography presented a completely different kind of challenge, and their answer was a landmark political move, creating Nunavut in 1999. This massive territory was carved out of the North specifically to grant self-governance to the Inuit people, a solution that was uniquely suited to its geography and population. So, as we've seen, these 5 themes are so much more than just textbook terms. They really give us a powerful way to understand that geography doesn't just create landscapes, it forges societies, economies, and ultimately our identities. It helps explain not just where we are, but who we are. And that brings us to today and to the future. As new forces like climate change and technology are literally redrawing our world, these same 5 themes are going to continue to tell the story. The big question for us is, what will that next chapter look like?